Yo, what is up? Carter here. Got another knife to look at. I didn't do an unboxing on this one because I've just done so many of those. It was getting kind of old. But yeah, this one's another behind the times knife for me. And I think I'm going through like a phase where I'm wanting to pick up some production knives that I just didn't get when they first came out. So I'm kind of going back and checking those out. And this is one of them. This is the Hogue Extreme EX01. This is the 3.5 inch version, tanto, with the green Damascus scales. My ideal, I really wanted the 4-inch one, but this one popped up pre-owned, brand new pre-owned for a great price, so I went ahead and got this one. Really good size though for EDC. I've been carrying this around for since yesterday. Very nice. I think this knife is a little bit of an unsung hero. It does have a lot of followers, but not as many as I think it should have. It's a very well executed US made knife with a lot of great properties, and it features the button lock, which I don't think it gets the coverage it deserves and the respect that it deserves. There's really only one thing I don't like about this knife, and it's pretty much the same thing everybody says, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's do some specs, huh? I already mentioned it's a 3.5 inch knife. Let's double check that. Yeah, you've got about 3.5 inches of cutting surface, so about from here to here. So really you got a little bit more than that of steel going past the handle, but pretty much 3.5 inches. Almost, yeah, just about 8 inches perfect, spot on length for total length. It's got a good thickness to it. You can see the excellent stone washing on the blade here. There we go. Really nice stone washing. This is a 154 cm blade, cryogenically quenched, treated, however you want to say it. I think it's set on the box 5859 HRC, I believe. Could be wrong. It's got a nice mirrored edge on there. I believe that's from the factory. I think I remember another review that was a brand new knife, not pre-owned, that had that mirror edge on it. For some reason I'm not focusing here. One thing I like about this too is the very minimal branding. You can see right there, it just says Hogue with a little logo, and on the other side you've got Elishewitz with his logo on there. It's got this cool like shark fin type deal up here. Just looks really neat. Very thick blade stock all the way to the end. Dual thumb studs. Jimping up here, although somewhat functional, not super functional. It's flat ground, V ground, however you want to say it. Here is the button lock. Some more jimping up here. This is fairly functional right here, and that's just cut right into the G10. You can see that this is just a full G10 body, and because of that they had to do a few interesting things to the construction of this knife. You've actually got pins that is, I assume glued on one side that fits into holes on the other side, and then everything that requires a screw, there's actual little brass, you can see inside here, little brass inserts inside the G10 that it screws into. And as you can see, it's tip up, tip down right hand carry. It's got Elishewitz's trademark spoon pocket clip. Very nice, goes in and out of the pocket, super smooth. Doesn't catch at all. It's got good retention, but it just slides right in, especially when you pull it out. Just comes right out of there. Now let's talk about this G10. I call this G-mascus. It's pretty interesting stuff. And I'm not quite sure what the process is. As you can see, it's layered kind of a dark, let's see if we can get in closer even. It's layered a dark and light green right there. But once you get towards the surface, it actually starts to wave. Let's see if we can see a good example here. Yeah, like right there. See how it waves? and that's what gives those circles. And what I'm kind of unclear on is why it only does that kind of towards the surface area here. I don't know if they took just layered G10 and somehow, I don't know if heat treated it and warped the top of it so they could get it this way, or if that's how it's manufactured so that the top layers have that kind of wave. I'm not quite sure. You can see it's got that peel ply texture on it, but it's very light. So the texture is not aggressive at all, but it does have this very aggressive cutout right here, kind of a honeycomb type pattern. Quite ambidextrous. You've got a thumb ramp on this side as well as this side for the thumb studs, and you can actually actuate that lock pretty easily with your left hand. Just press that, move it down. The ergos, classic Elishewitz. He kind of sets the hand back a little bit farther than many. A lot of the times, a knife this size, your finger would be placed up a little bit higher, but he actually moves it back, and it gives you a lot of reach for the size of knife. And this curve just really kind of sits right in there. It takes a second to get used to. It almost feels like it's too far forward, but once you get used to it, it feels really, really good. This Damascus just melts right in your hand. Great ergos on this baby. Very nice. Now to get this button lock to work, there's steel inserts in here, and I don't know if I'd recommend taking this apart. Obviously I did. In fact, the first thing I did was try to remove this safety. Well, I did remove that safety. It left a big hole right here though, and I didn't like that. And then I lost the detent ball for it, and luckily was able to find it. But yeah, it's a little bit tricky. I may do a takedown video on this if anybody's interested in seeing that. Because if you do take this apart, when you put it back together, it's going to be confusing. You're going to look at all the parts, especially putting this button back in, and you're not going to really understand how to get it to go back together right. So there's kind of an order of operations on how you put it back together that I may go over, I may not. Here is, doesn't have a lanyard hole, has a lanyard pin. I'm not a big lanyard guy. I've tried it, I've wanted to get into it. I don't like it. I don't like the thing hanging out of my pocket and clanking around and stuff like that. Just don't like it. Perfectly centered. And of course, this is my usual all over the place rambling kind of video that I'm famous for. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. Man, it's a lot of fun to play with this thing. All last night, my thumb actually kind of hurts a little just from, and not because this button's hard to press, just from doing it over and over. Oh, I was going to say, button locks do seem to need a little bit of a break-in period. The button will be sticky at first. It was the case with this one, as well as my Brian Tycoon. So they do require a little bit of break-in. Let's take a look at the lockup percentage. And yes, button locks do have a lockup percentage. In fact, they work very similar in concept, at least in terms of wear, as the Walker liner lock or the Chris Reeve integral or frame lock. If you can see there. So I'm about, what is that, about 40% now. So you can see right here, that's where the actual lockup is taking place on that round cylinder. And this is at an angle. So as it wears in, it'll continue to lock up tightly as this button cylinder here continues to progress this way. One good thing about the button lock is it's a very strong lock and it's a very light lock. This is a light knife because of all this G10. And the whole locking mechanism itself is very light, and yet you get the benefit of heat-treated steel on heat-treated steel. You don't have to worry about the whole soft titanium, carbonization, that kind of thing. You get the benefit of this steel on steel, and yet it's still very light. Unlike, a steel frame lock, which would be very, very heavy. The downside to the button lock is it is a little bit more delicate. It doesn't handle debris very well. And not even so much that it doesn't handle it as well, it's not as easy to overcome. You know, a frame lock, if you get debris in there and you're unable to close the knife or get it to lock up, you can just pound on it and manually push that frame lock into place if you need to. And you can squeeze the crap out of it, and that'll keep it in place. If this doesn't lock up, you need to take some time to clean out the debris to allow it to fully engage. You can't kind of manually override it and make it lock up. So that is an aspect, not a issue for me because I'm not out in the jungles too often. You never know though. But it's just a great lock. I prefer it over the access lock. I prefer it over the brain fart, the reverse liner lock, compression lock. That's what Spyderco calls it, the compression lock. I like the compression lock, but it does have its problems in that it can kind of cause some pinching, being exposed back here, whereas the button lock, you don't have that problem. And just like the access lock, because you don't have a liner or a frame lock exerting pressure upon the blade, you don't have as much drag, and so it makes for a real smooth, easy to open knife. As you can see there, just kind of floats into place. And I've got it tightened up fairly strong because I wanted to eliminate any and all blade play, but I could do it a little bit looser and it'd be even smoother. Very good detent. You got to really flick it out. And the detent simply works on how this button lock interacts right here. So overall, just a really cool blade. I don't think it gets as much attention as it should. The downside I was talking about, of course, is the safety. The pointless, dumb, crappy safety. I have literally accidentally engaged this a few times and, you know, nope, won't close. Oh yeah, okay. Stupid lock. Don't like it. I don't at all. I don't like safeties on autos, which there is an auto version of this, and I can only assume that this was put on there because of that. I'm not quite sure. It doesn't make sense at all on this knife. It does not make sense. On an auto, you turn the safety on so that it will not fire by accident. In this knife, even with the safety on, it's not really on because you can still open it. It doesn't fully engage until it's open, and then all it does is prevent you from unlocking it. But unlike the auto lock system on the CRKTs, which prevent the liner from sliding or moving, all this does is prevent the button from being pressed. It doesn't actually prevent lock slippage per se. I mean, I guess it kind of does, but I don't know. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't there. There's no chance of you accidentally disengaging the button. I mean, it's not going to happen. You're not going to accidentally press that button and disengage that lock. But I guess it does add a slight bit more security to prevent this from slipping off its lock surface, but I'd still prefer not to have it. The upside of it, though, is because you can't lock it closed, you don't run a risk of not being able to open your knife. You are always going to be able to open it. The only problem you might run into is accidentally engaging that and not being able to close it, but super quick to do that. I originally tried to tighten the screw down to try and just keep it unlocked, but it doesn't make a difference. There's actually it's pretty crazy. I mean, it works like all your standard button locks. Very simple. When you engage it, it slides that piece of steel underneath this button so you can't press the button. And actually on this side, right here, there's a little spring, and then there's a little tiny itty-bitty ball bearing that acts as a detent. And that's the ball bearing that I lost by accident. And I put it back together, and I realized that it was just flopping around, and you know, I thought it was screwed. So I went out into the garage to get the really small hex screw. These are hex right here. These are Torx. I have no idea why they went Torx and hex and not just all one or all the other. But went out to get the tool, and I saw the little ball bearing sitting on my work desk magically. It could have easily been lost, but there it was. So anyways, that is kind of my overview and opinions on this awesome knife. I really like it. Oh, another con that I want to talk about is the G-mascus itself. At first, I thought it was really cool, and it is pretty cool. It does look pretty cool, but I don't know. It's a little too much for me. It's a little too camo-y. I'd kind of prefer it just to be solid, I think. That would look really nice. And unfortunately, they don't offer that. There is the black G-mascus, which is a little more subdued. It's not quite in your face, but it's still the same concept with black and kind of a dark gray. Sorry this video ran so long, guys. I don't like to do super long videos, but it is what it is. This is how long it went, so I don't know. Can't complain. All right, guys. Talk to you later.